I want you to consider this bit of code. I'm assigning a value of 1 before actually declaring it. Then I declare the variable a, and then I try to log it out. Am I going to get 1? Am I going to get some sort of error because I'm assigning a value before it's defined? Let's see what happens. I actually get 1. Somehow this worked properly. I want you to take a look at another bit of code. Let's see if I try to log out a, and then after logging it out, I'm going to actually declare it and then set it a value. Am I going to get a reference error now? Am I going to get 1 again? Let's see what happens. I actually get undefined. What is going on? What we saw happening just a second ago was actually a case of hoisting. In order to understand hoisting, you need to understand 2 things. The first thing is that JavaScript compiles and then it executes code. So during the compilation phase, it's translating our code into something the computer can understand. The other thing you need to know is that a statement like var a equals 1 is not a single statement. It's actually made of a declaration and an assignment. And this is an important detail. Our declaration is where we actually declare our variable, var a. And the assignment is where we give it a value, a equals 1. When JavaScript is compiling our code and translating it into something that the computer can understand, it processes all the declarations first and leaves the assignments in place. So essentially what's happening is all our variable declarations are being hoisted, kind of like you can imagine it being put at the top of our code. So the first example I showed you where we had a equals 2, and then we declared the variable var a, and then we logged it out. Really what it looks like when JavaScript compiles it, you can imagine it looking more something like this. First it gets declared, then it gets assigned a value of 2, and then we're logging it out. And I just remembered that I really used 1 in the first example, but that's not really important. What's important is that when JavaScript is compiling this code right here, var a, our declaration, is getting processed first. So it's getting essentially moved above a equals 2 and ends up looking like this. And that's why when we run these 3 lines of code, we actually get 2 outputted to the screen. And if I run this, it runs exactly how we expect. And I can comment this out. And if I uncomment this, it does the exact same thing. We get 2 again. Since I showed you what happens to the first example, I figured I'd go over the second one as well. What I had going on was I logged out the variable b before actually having this statement where I declared and assigned it a value. So what's happening when JavaScript compiles this code is our declaration var b is essentially getting moved to the top of our program, and then we're logging out b, and then we're assigning it a value of 1. And this is why in the beginning of the video you saw when I ran it, I got the value undefined. Because when we declare a variable without assigning a value, by default it's given the value of undefined. Another important detail when it comes to hoisting is that hoisting is per scope, and it will never move a declaration outside of its scope. If you're not quite sure what scope is, I actually did a video on it, and you can take a look at that just to make sure you get an understanding of it if this confuses you. So anyways, var a is going to be at the top of this scope. If I try to access a from outside of this function, I'm not going to be able to, and we're going to get an error. If I try to access A from within the function, above where it's declared, I'm not going to get an error because hoisting essentially will move this declaration above the console log. And by default, a variable declared without having a value assigned to it will be undefined. So when I run this program, I actually get the value of undefined. Essentially, what JavaScript did when it was compiling the code was it moved this var a above the console log to the top of its scope, never outside of its scope. Not only do variable declarations get hoisted, so do functions as well. This actually allows me to invoke my function foo from above where it's written in my code. If I run this program, I'm actually going to get undefined outputted to the console instead of a reference error. And to make this a little more understandable, I'm going to set a equal to 1. Run this again. And the function runs as if I written it above where it's invoked. When JavaScript is compiling code, it takes entire function declarations and processes them first. So essentially, this entire function was moved above foo before the program was run. This is not the same for function expressions. If I have a function expression, which is essentially me declaring a variable and then assigning it the value of a function, what happens here if I try to invoke foo before the function expression? Let's take a look. I get a type error. And the reason why I get a type error is because when we have a function expression, the function expression itself does not get hoisted. Only the variable declaration of foo gets hoisted. So when JavaScript is compiling this code, essentially what it looks like is the variable declaration at the top, and then I try to invoke the variable, and then after it's invoked, I'm assigning it the value of the function expression. Var foo by default, since it doesn't have a value yet, is undefined. So when I try to invoke it, I'm trying to invoke an undefined value as a function. And this is why we get the type error, foo is not a function. Well, that pretty much covers hoisting. To summarize, JavaScript compiles and then executes code. During this compiling phase, all variable declarations and function declarations, are processed before the code gets executed. When we have a statement like var a equals 1, this is actually two parts. It's a declaration, var a, and it's an assignment, a equals 1. The declarations get hoisted, the assignments stay in place, and so do function expressions. That's pretty much it for hoisting. I hope you guys understand it. I hope I helped you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.